Welcome to the inaugural California State University Dominguez Hills Presidential Distinguished Lecture, the first of many to come. I'm Mitch Avila. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities here at Dominguez Hills, and I'll be your MC this afternoon or this evening. I've chosen to work at Dominguez Hills because it is a mission-driven institution with excellent, committed faculty, exceptional staff, and visionary senior leadership. This campus is one that knows, above all, the power of higher education to impact the lives of students in our community. And I'm especially proud to call myself a Toral because this is a community of scholars that value serious conversations around issues of vital importance to our students and to our community. And it's for these reasons that it's my pleasure to introduce to you our newest campus leader, Dr. Thomas Parham. Today's inaugural Presidential Distinguished Lecture is a result of his vision for this campus. So please welcome Dr. Parham.
Thank you, Ms. Let me say good afternoon. As Dean Avila said, I am the new president of California State University, Dominguez Hills. And on behalf of our First Lady, my partner, Davida Hopkins Parham, dear, would you stand and please be recognized? We are a team. On behalf of our First Lady, on behalf of our senior administration, our faculty, our staff, and especially our students, I want to welcome you to this inaugural Presidential Distinguished Lecture Series. Now, Presidential Distinguished Lecture Series, particularly of this type, are not designed to simply entertain you with facts and data, nor to merely acquaint you with a particular issue or concern. These lectures want to inform you, yes, but. Distinguished lectures, I think, have higher aspirational purposes that we seek today. We seek to raise your awareness and consciousness. We seek to challenge the biases and assumptions each of you arrived with here today when you walked through those doors. We seek to dislodge you from those comfortable categories of intellectual, emotional, and behavioral apathy that keep you stuck in the malaise of complacency and contentment. Somebody know what I'm talking about today. See, this lecture seeks to disrupt your sensibilities about why certain speakers say should matter to you. Our speakers and conversations have come here today to do just that. Now, lectures like this one do not come about with just a vision. It requires, quite honestly, some very deliberate intentionality to plan and execute, combined with support of strategic partners who embrace the vision and endeavor one seeks to execute on. Tonight, as your president, I want to recognize several supporters and strategic partners who collaborated with this president and this California State University campus to take this evening's program from a dream to a reality. And those partners include Aetna, represented by Clemente Gonzalez. Has Clemente arrived? Not yet. We are still waiting on him. I want you to give Aetna applause if you would. Oh, we can do a little better than that. Give it up for Aetna. And I had a conversation with Sharice Raymond Weaver, who is current president, CEO of the Brotherhood Crusade and their board. And she simply heard the vision and said, we're here to support. So I'd like you to put your hands together and thank the Brotherhood Crusade who partnered with us to be able to bring this on. The prophetic voice of Dr. King reminds us, ladies and gentlemen, that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. So this president, your president, desires to be a voice of uncompromising clarity on the things that matter in higher education in the world. And whether the vehicle is a scholarly manuscript, articles on professional organization newsletters, or distinguished lectures like this one, the California State University, Dominguez Hills, and higher education generally should be the place where issues of community importance and social justice become the topics of critical discourse and analysis. We want Dominguez Hills to be the place where you as a community can come to hear about these issues. And whether it's about politics or economics or social science or the arts and humanities or athletics or whatever the concern is, we want you to know that this is your home, and we welcome you into this Toro Nation. Now, decades ago, famed scholar and public intellectual W.B. Du Bois, he asked a question among four that he asked in his writing that day. And he asked, what does integrity look like in the face of oppression? What does integrity look like in the face of oppression? Professionals of all walks of life have had to interrogate that query and wrestle not only with the answer, but also with the consequences. Let me say that again. They've had to not only wrestle with the question of what does integrity look like, but with the consequences. So as you even look at the banners today, this is not just accidental artistic artwork, because there are decisions made, there are consequences that have been born from people who are reflected on these banners. See, indeed, when the authentic self demands expression and struggles with the fundamental question of human authenticity in the face of profound incongruence between what a society preaches and what it practices, the dissonance between what one must do and what one feels is right to do becomes very pronounced. That circumstance often represents each of us and presents to each of us a choice point, if you will, a fork in the road that challenges us to confront what we really believe and what we are willing to sacrifice for. Former query is more easily rationalized. The latter query, more difficult to realize because it demands a recognition that our actions oftentimes have consequences and require sacrifice we have to be willing to make if our actions draw the ire of those whose power and position to negatively impact our lives is exercised. In short, such a stand demands a degree of uncommon courage to stand on principle and not fold or crumble under the weight of social norms or expectations to conform to the status quo. These are the times we live in today. Such has been the case for those blessed with exceptional athletic talent, which when combined with very hard-working, determined, and disciplined work ethic, makes for a world-class athlete poised to illustrate their athletic prowess on the fields and arenas of competition. And yet, participation in their sport and elevation of their status to an elite class provides them with a platform to not simply answer a reporter's interview questions, but also to raise their voice to speak out on other social causes and against social injustice. Such was certainly the case in 1949 when Paul Robeson, the former NFL star and bass baritone singer attending the Paris Peace Conference in '49, delivered a seminal condemnation of American racism. This is not new. Activism was also on display in June of 1967 when a host of African-American athletes gathered in Cleveland. That's the picture you see at the bottom here. In Cleveland, hosted by Jim Brown and others for a historic summit centered around a conversation with then champion of the world, Muhammad Ali, and ultimately a show of solidarity and support for his right to exercise his rights as an American citizen against a government that would have him, right, defer that and move in a different direction, even as he refused induction into the armed forces. Our featured speaker this afternoon is one such individual. And I give you this context because I want you to see that this is not just about how fast he was or how brilliant of an athlete he was. It was fundamentally about the courage and character of the man, who in the course of exceptional athletic feats, he chose to use his platform and summon the courage to speak out against social injustice that plagued American society. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, where a silent jester raised a volume on a voice that reverberated around the world to call attention to American racism, apartheid in South Africa, and the profound incongruence between what America professed and what she practiced. Our distinguished speaker is a man of unusual character and principle. His courage to speak out, we celebrate this year. His presence here this afternoon allows us the platform to further interrogate the question of whether athletics should be used as a platform for just speaking out, or, as one Fox News reporter suggested, athletes should just shut up and dribble. Our evening will feature an address and presentation by an Olympic champion, a conversation between he and I, a panel discussion about athletics as a platform for speaking out, and an opportunity for selected members of the audience to actually raise questions. Ladies and gentlemen, he's had a remarkable career as a world-class track athlete and former player in the NFL, coach at both Oberlin College and Santa Monica Community College, with BAs from San Jose State and honorary degrees from where else? Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. Right? A Doctor of Humane Letters in 2007. For this first distinguished lecture series, the Cal State University is really pleased to honor, right, this proud individual who will be introduced in a moment. So as we get our evening underway, I want you to know how honored and privileged I am that all of you have joined us. But mostly important, I want to thank Tommy and Delois for the conversation we had back in June, where we dreamed about this possibility, and now it comes to fruition right here on your campus at California State University, Dominguez Hills. Here to kick our evening off, please welcome back our Dean, Mitch Avila. Mitch. And coming into the room, I've already given him props, but it was his dream along with me, sitting at a conference of the 100 Black men, that helped to bring this in. I want you to raise your hands again for my good friend from Edna. This is Clemente Gonzalez, who helped us support this. Give it up if you would, give it up.
One image from 1968 became iconic. It was an image of two Olympic athletes on a medal podium, fists raised, shoes off, heads bowed, gesturing silently. We're pleased this evening to invite back or welcome back to DH the man behind that iconic image, Dr. Tommie Smith, Olympic gold medalist and champion of human rights. Rather than give a long introduction, we're going to view together a short video describing those events of that year, and then we'll set the stage for the remainder of the discussion.
Pain is obvious, but how one handles that pain isn't. Therefore, we must move proactively in the future.
Tommy was the fastest human being that I had ever seen.
Bob Hayes at maximum speed was at 25 miles per hour between 50 to 75 yards, and Tommy was actually increasing to 28 miles per hour at 75 meters to 100 meters. His stride length, which averaged 8 feet 5 inches, actually increased to 8 feet 8 inches the last 20 meters of a 200 meters.
Tommy C. Smith was born on June 6, 1944, in Clarksville, Texas, the seventh of 12 children. God's intention for him to provide a special service was evident very early, as Tommy barely survived a serious bout with pneumonia as an infant. Not only did he survive, but he also went on to become a distinguished chapter in African American history. Beginning his incredible career in Lemoore, California, he went on to become the only man in the history of track and field to hold 11 world records at the same time. By the time he graduated from high school, he had been voted most valuable athlete 3 years straight in basketball, football, and track and field. His college career was highlighted with many achievements. He started striving and breaking world records in track as a sophomore and did not stop until he had tied or broken 13. Tommy Smith received his Bachelor's of Art degree from San Jose State University in social science with a double minor in military science and physical education. In 1974, he received his master's degree in sociology from Goddard College, Cambridge, Massachusetts. As a college student, Tommy amazingly tied or broke a total of 13 world records in track. However, realizing the importance of education, he went on to obtain his master's degree in sociology.
It's hard to explain just how violent the 60s were.
1968 was a volcanic eruption in America at almost every level.
Come on now! We will define black power! Hey, LBJ, how many Kurds you killed today?
That year alone, Vietnam cost us 16,000 lives.
We are gonna march with the force of our soul! I wanna be with the bad niggas!
In the States, that is the shaking of the foundation of American civilization.
Go smell a Nate's face, nigger!
2 major assassinations, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy.
We will be free by any means necessary.
The whole American culture kind of came unhinged for a time.
Paris in May of 68, Prague, 68. I mean, 68 is the kind of pivotal year where this awakening of everyday people is taking place across national boundaries.
Among the millions awakened by the civil rights movement were black collegiate athletes who would earn glory for their schools while struggling to be treated as equals alongside their white teammates. Young men like John Carlos and Tommy Smith began to speak out.
This has not that much to do with patriotism. If it were, we would be treated just like any other human being on the face of the earth.
Because I was a world-class athlete, I should not be involved in anything but running fast so America could pat me on the back.
Why should we be concerned about human rights? You're just supposed to run fast and shut up.
During the historical 19th Olympiad in Mexico City in the summer of 1968, Tommy broke the world and Olympic record with a time of 19.83 seconds and became the 200-meter Olympic champion.
It's a good start. And Carlos, as usual, has burst out of the blocks. Tommy Smith running pretty well so far. And in lane 2, Bambouk is strong on the outside. It's Edwin Roberts. It's John Carlos right now. It's Carlos and Smith. And here comes Tommy Smith. Smith has done it with his hands in the air. I think Norman of Australia leaned to beat John Carlos.
This was one of the greatest 200-meter races ever run. Tommy Smith broke his own world record by 0.2 of a second.
Tommy ran that race as if he were running for his life. You could feel like this magic wind at his back.
It was just beautiful. I mean, this is what, you know, if you could be in the Olympics and see this, this is what it is. This is athletics at its best.
Carlos and Smith plan their next move.
I was very nervous. I was scared. Why be scared now? I've been scared all my life, up until then.
As the two men prepared to take their place in Olympic history, their thoughts turned to the past.
To stand for something, you know, you just might fall for anything. A hope, afraid to fail.
I find one black guy in a suit to work. White bathroom, black bathroom.
I wanted to be somebody.
200 meters, men, Olympic victory ceremony.
After accepting their medals, as the national anthem began to play and the American flag was hoisted, the two men bowed their heads and raised their black gloved fists into the night air.
All the people around us were in shock. We were like, oh, do you see what's going on?
It was nothing but a raised fist in the air and a bowed head, acknowledging the American flag, not symbolizing a hatred for it.
His concern was the plight of African Americans and others at home and abroad. Cheered by some, jeered by others, and ignored by many more, Tommie Smith made a commitment to dedicate his life, even at great personal risk, to champion the cause of African Americans psychologically, educationally, morally, athletically, financially, and spiritually.
I had to wash cars. World record holder of 11 records down at North American Pontiac, washing cars in the back with a big sign out front, Carmen C.R. Olympian Tommie Smith. They would call me out in the back. Tommie, you have a customer up front, like I was a salesperson or something. I had to pull off my old dungarees and fluff my little tie up and come up with a big smile on my face. Hi, I'm Tommie Smith, how are you? They'd talk to me a few minutes, get their autograph. Well, let Johnny get autograph. And as soon as they finished, I would go back out to the back lot out there, put my washing clothes on and continue washing cars.
The story of the silent gesture is captured for all time in the 1999 HBO TV documentary, Fist of Freedom, and the 2009 ESPN documentary, Return to Mexico City. Tommie Smith's courageous leadership, talent, and activism has earned him well-deserved acclaim and awards worldwide. Since the games of the 19th Olympiad, Tommie has enjoyed a distinguished career as a coach, educator, and activist. He has served as a faculty member at Santa Monica College in Santa Monica, California for 27 years, teaching, coaching, and serving on academic committees. He has dedicated a total of 37 years to educating and teaching our children. In June 2005, Tommie retired and moved to Georgia. He continues to travel nationwide, giving himself to all. The Tommie Smith Youth Track Athletics is in its 6th year in Northern California and in its 3rd year at Louisville, Kentucky, and in New Orleans, its 2nd year. In January 2007, Dr. Smith completed his autobiography entitled Silent Gesture, published by Temple University Press. He was nominated for an NAACP Image Award in the literary category, Autobiography.
I wasn't there, but the last years that Tommie and I have been married and together, I have relived 1968. This is his journey back, and I'm just feeling blessed to be part of it.
It created, in a silent way, in the most beautiful way, symbolically, what people were feeling, and it made a statement that said, here's who I am, here's what I believe, here's how important it is to me.
The fundamental lesson of what they did is courage. Courage to think for themselves. A lot of people thought that was just black power. No, that was black people affirming their dignity. So it wasn't anti-American, it was anti-injustice in America.
I think to signify in the Olympics that there was more work to do, to acknowledge the injustices that were still taking place, I think was a breakthrough moment in an overall push to move this country towards a more equal and more just society.
As you can see, the life of Tommie Smith at this point has been an historical event. Therefore, let us move progressively forward in the future.
Tommie Smith is featured in several national publications. Innumerable papers, foreign magazines, audio and video media continue to seek him out for their features, training products, and presentations. He competed and continues to travel throughout various European and Asian nations and conducts seminars, clinics, and delivers speeches to those locations, as well as on domestic college campuses. Tommie Smith is available to share, educate, as well as motivate from the academic to the corporate level.
Tommie Smith.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you again. I'm very proud to be here this evening, being the first annual speaker, thank you, Dr. Parham, on this presidential series, and I think it's going to be a great legacy as we continue this trek at this university. Now this evening, I didn't know it was going to be that long, so we'll get into it real quick and hope that I get out of here before somebody do something stupid. But I was told before I came to this juncture here that don't introduce anybody I know, but I must take this opportunity to introduce my wife Dolores and daughter Danielle. Y'all stand up so people can see what I got. Marilyn McPoland, thank you very much for burning the wires of my telephone up, talking to us, trying to get the arrangement straight for us to be here. Dr. Parham and I talked in part about the legacies of athletes and the social activism some time ago, but didn't have enough time to finish our conversation. So I'm looking forward over the next few years to talking to him on this particular situation. I'm also in agreement of that particular need and discussing the power of communication and sharing so we can understand the differences of involvement. But first comes self. Self. Remember that self as I go through the next few minutes on a couple of things. But tonight I stand firm on this platform or podium today, abiding in the retrospective belief that conversation will lead to a continuance in sharing ideas that will lead optimism to an open forum of social topical understandings, though differences may collide. Differences may collide. Lending optimism is relative because differences in opinion can lead to quick closure. And I think most of us in here, professionals, have heard that quick closure or shut up because I got something else to do. And we don't give enough attention to the need to lengthen that conversation. So listen with optimism or to the freedom of expression. And I hope there are students in here tonight because there's a couple of things that we're going to go over very quickly in the next 15 minutes or so. Working together, my friends, we can make a change. But first comes self. Self. You know, working together, making a change, and what makes change lasting. In fact, gullibly strong is the concentration of different ingredients, or let's call them personalities, not ingredients, personalities en route to a giant pot called unity. But to unite should not be related to an explosive walkout because of those differences in opinion. Working to prove the need to succeed is a continual, folks, sacrificial movement. If you don't put in, you cannot draw out. If you put in, watch out for overdraft. Too much of anything is not good. Too little of the same is just as bad. And one great oratorical ecumenical giant once said that if there is no sacrifice, there can be no advancement. Sacrifice for human advancement is redemptive. And if you don't believe in self, you may fall for someone else's misfortune. Now, I've been asked many times, and I think we'll get into that a little bit up here, Doc, what was the benefit standing on that victory stand in 1968 with your dominating gesture that caused you pain and effort? I believed in 1968, and I still do, that standing on the platform for social justice anytime is redemptive, and the pain of sacrifice en route is no greater the pain than that of those who perished on the historical path of hope, fighting for justice, and secured that seat of progress which we sit in today. Courage must be the byproduct used to continually fight inequality, which is still on the rampage in America this day. A battle is never won if first you don't engage. And we too often associate failure as an existing social negative in the war against racism. And it is very obvious that not enough is done to expunge its growth. I duly believe when one encounters problem acts linked to social inequality in public or private, and especially in conversation, and your reaction is a spineless, oh well, you become a part of the problem. So the struggle continues. The struggles continue. Hope should never be an outdated process of thought. We fought through the maze of social ignorance from Reconstruction to this day. And many of us have tasted that recipe of social destruction commanded by racist ideology. Moving forward, we can't afford to believe that hope is a passion that's obsolete. And yes, there are those of us who may believe that by keeping quiet and moving with that scratch and shuffle, non-involved cranial flow, believing that the path for fighting for social equality and community safety is someone else's duty. Some of us may feel that we're protected from social bias because we have a good job, or because we are the right color, or because we smile a lot, or that you have friends in high places. You know, the higher you think with that love of social ignorance, the further you'll fall when you realize how wrong you were. History tells us, but few of us can remember witnessing an iconic moment, August 28th, 1963. No, I wasn't born, I didn't ask that. At the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. I was a senior in high school myself. and most of you had not arrived. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King stood with social intensity and said, and I quote, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Dr. King's work and his words have withstood the weathering of time. These words are historical reminders that time is an infinite space, and working toward unity must continue indefinitely. It was in October. Lord have mercy. The year was 1968. In fact, 6 months after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, 2 young black American athletes from San Jose State University stood atop an Olympic victory stand with black gloved fists raised skyward, heads bowed and shoeless with black socks. Even I can remember that. The infamous silent gesture on that Olympic medal podium was catapulted by silence heard around the world. It was my cry, it was Tommie Smith's cry for freedom, highlighted by truths of why it had to be done. It was a sacrifice continuing the tireless struggle supported by the Olympic Project for Human Rights. It promoted a humane, athletic message and political views of action. Today, the inclusion of the athletic continuance and composure have accelerated this movement to a new wave commitment. This is a positive and hopefully advancing yet another movement to further identify the covertness of racism. Now, I kind of hid a little bit underneath a few of them long words, a message, and I hope you picked it up. Athletic involvement is vital. I'm not supporting a walkout. I am supporting one's social involvement to overtly use what fits the crime and not turning our backs on an obvious social need that will stand solid for decades, making positive changes on its way to an acceptable answer. Our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, and extended family members have perished on the social battlegrounds fighting for seats which we occupy today. They visualized a better existence for us new wave people who too soon forget the struggle and certainly from whence we've come. Dr. King, in his speech in 1963, also mentioned the power of dreaming. We must give free range to our imagination, people. There is justice in a social indictment of hope. What's wrong with the vision of the conscious mind? What's wrong with that? Look forward, believe. We could never have moved forward if we were absent of the sacrifices of our forefathers whose dreams spawned our presence here today. My goodness gracious. Pass collection plate, Danny, when I leave the front, okay? Get it resolved to me. Don't become despondent and wallow in despair if a dream doesn't come when you want it to. Students out there, that A grade is not coming because you dreamed it, though. You still have to study. Don't be lethargic in your responsibilities. Get up and attend those classes already set in curriculum for you. They're not going to change because of your lazy behind. Sacrifices were made for you long before you. Don't be insulting for life that humane sacrifices have offered you. Do not. That seat you're sitting in this day has been bought through human sacrifice, paid for by spilled blood in battle. But that grade is on you. You don't have to run the 200-meter race in world record time of 19.83 seconds, though you saw 19.78. We won't talk about that right now. You don't have to do that in front of the world to make a social awareness statement and then be ridiculed, prosecuted, and athletically banned from any further competition for the rest of your life. It has already been done for you. I did not give up on society, and I will never give up on society. I offered hope through awareness, where you could have and you did not limit one expectation of a positive outcome. Hold still for a moment and ask yourself, what have I contributed in the struggle for constitutional freedom? Not reform, it's already written in the constitutional rights, but the words are absent of truth. And while you're at it, read the word of the national anthem all the way through, all the words. What's wrong with studying about survival of our legacy in history? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with a little extra study? My people, there is a moment waiting just for each one of you, especially you students. Step up, step up. Dreamers are believers, and believers are achievers. Now, I'm not throwing rocks and hiding my hand. I've been hit by many rocks throwers who swear they don't know how to throw. But these friends of mine just didn't know that the tongue is mightier than the, thank you very much. If you didn't get it, don't worry, you'll get it by the time you get home. I had to reveal, friends, 5 decades ago, what some call a negative silence to make a positive stand. Sacrifices may plague our futures, but don't permit it to kill our spirit. You must believe in yourself. You must believe in self. Study and magnify the profound dignity of those who perished in social battles, fighting injustice so you could have that seat today. Have faith that your needs are on the way. But without work, faith is dead. Without work, faith is dead. All the faith you want. But if you don't work for it, you're still not going to get it. I tried that in grammar school. My daddy, that's a whole nother story. A whole nother story. You are somebody. You don't have the right to ignore the legacies of sacrifice for social transformation. You have been redeemed. You have been redeemed. But really, who are you? But really, who are you? Voices of appreciation, I know, friends, they're hard to come by. Because American structure nowadays tell us, don't speak because you might have to pay the price for telling the truth. It's called sacrifice. If you don't sacrifice, you're not going to move forward. The songwriter and poet James Weldon Johnson wrote in 1900, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Let us march on till victory is won. So I challenge all of us to become proactive in our social contributions. But first, we must be willing to sacrifice in order to achieve. Reggie, I know you're out there because I saw you walk in. How many times have you taken that ball and hoped there was a hole, but it wasn't, so you went to the outside? Many times you have to make your own hole, even if there was not one. Society is no different. If there's no door, you might have to make one. Once you get to that door, there's no handle on it, you have to make a handle for it. It's called sacrifice. It's called sacrifice. GPA students, grade point average, must have a significant potency in your thought in moving forward. And how to move with pride while you're moving forward. Don't pin up your thoughts behind the knowledge of not knowing. You're much smarter than that. You're much smarter than that. So I'm gonna sit down. But let me end with 4 little things here. I call them my P points. Prepare prayerfully. Proceed positively. Pursue persistently. And plan purposefully. Thank you. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Come on, have a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, the incomparable Tommy Smith. Oh, you can do better than that. Give it up, Tommy Smith! So, Tommy, you know, through my work with the 100 Black Men and of America, and my role as a psychologist, that I think a lot about the psychology, not only around identity, but around the ideas that become the substance of behavior for people. As we think about the dissonance I talked about earlier, about what you must do and what you feel is right to do, talk some, if you can, about the conflict, the dissonance about your demonstrations in the '68 Olympics, because it's not just anxiety and nervousness. There's conflict going on in your mind. Talk to the audience, if you would, about the conflict.
All the time in my academic classes, especially sociology classes, at the philosophy classes, anxiety, on the track, anxiety. You have to make a decision. And once you make that decision, there's not too many times you can go back and rewrite history. You have to maintain it, take it through. So it's much easier to think before you act than to try to change it once you made that decision. 1968 was one of those times. Tommy Smith spoke very little around campus, especially Dr. Parham on the track. I always believe to let your action do the work. Action speaks louder than words. So when I started destroying folks, I kind of like to feel, you know what I mean? But I had to make a decision first to work. I had to go out there and work. I couldn't sit around and hope that because I ran a couple of races and did pretty good, I was going to do good all the time. So that decision to work was because I wanted to maintain the feeling of doing something good, doing something well enough so people will come back and see me run again. When I was teaching school, I started teaching school at the 5th grade. Not me being in the 5th grade, but I started teaching the 5th graders. And my first word in my first class was, "Who are you?" One of the kids said, "I'm somebody." And I said, "Yeah, but who is that somebody?" He said, "I don't know." My reason for saying this is you have to plant a seed before it'll grow. And it might germinate if the soil is bad. So from the bottom of a thought to the end of the fruit, you have to take care of what you thought it was going to be. It's the way it was for me throughout my grammar school education, my grammar school teaching, to competition, through coaching, and through teaching, all the way through. And that's quite difficult if you don't have a plan. Students, please have a plan based off of studying. Now, you know, Dr. Parham, me, you and I can go a bit on the analogy of studying like Plato did with Plato and the allegory of the cave, but we're just going to be cool, sit here, you know. I don't mean to, you know, disgrace a president's presence, but this man here is more than a president. He's a human being.
Say that. And oftentimes, this generation of young people have much more of a social justice mindset, I think, than, say, a generation in, say, the 80s and the 70s. But oftentimes, I think they aren't quite clear about the consequences that come from demonstration of social protest. I wonder if you can help us all understand the specific consequences you had to endure as a result of your own courageous stand against oppression.
It started, the courageousness part of it, which is a big word. It should always start with a capital C. By junior year in college at San Jose State University, when I was cut, because like I said, folks, I said nothing in college. My dad said, boy, when you go to college, what's that school you going to? I said, college. He said, yeah, that one too. He said, you're going to get an education, which I don't have. I said, yes, sir. He said, you get your education, you get married, you have kids, you already got a church home, then you can die. I was finished with my dad right then, okay? I said, no, Dad, this can't happen. I didn't say that to him, but I thought that process. Thank you, wife, for that grunt. My wife grunts when I get off the path and start something else, and I can hear her a mile away. I said, what was your question? You got to have some kind of solidness in your thought process here so you won't get off the track, you know?
What we were talking about is, see, what had happened was, along the way, the dreams and aspirations, life happens, right?
Amen.
We're talking about the consequences you had to endure and helping young people understand that it is really about sacrifice and the question of what are you prepared to sacrifice, not do you know what to do. Most people know the right thing to do. Most people are just not prepared to sacrifice what it is they have to give up. Talk to them about what you had to give up. What were the consequences you had to endure for the stance you took?
Moving through San Jose State University and setting world records put the position on me, or put me in a position. And I like to put position on me much better because it's defining. To set an example, to make it clear that anytime you can move a society in a direction of positive use, that sacrifice you have no choice but to make. That is a sacrifice. When you're not sure that you want to do it, but the position that you're in, meaning that your responsibility is to help, to qualify an awareness to be a part of a viable system for all. The Olympic Project for Human Rights, which also includes the civil part of it, but it's a human, which is worldwide. I had no choice but to give up my life for something that I believed in because my forefathers also gave up their life so I could have a chance to do something to move in a direction of social addictions, which was equality. Now, I know that back then I didn't know this. That's why Tommie Smith never said anything while he was in college or on the track or after the victory stand. I knew what it was. I didn't have the language to explain. And maybe now for some of you out there, I might not be doing a good job now, but as Muhammad Ali said, you might not like how I'm saying it, but you know what I mean. Okay, so you have no choice. So anybody out there who's in a position, especially you administrators, there's a responsibility. Sorry. Dr. Parham, no, he's going to have to spend burn a lot of night oil to get his program across because he got to prove now, sorry, Doc, I know you can put me in jail after this, that what you were hired for is to do what you think is best. And that's a sacrifice. The victory stand was a sacrifice. It wasn't for Tommie Smith, no way.
It was for those who had no platform to stand on. What did I say after the victory stand? I said nothing because it was your thought to take advantage of what happened.
I'm looking at the banner that we've created, which I'm loving. And it chronicles the 1967 summit with Jim Brown, your stance on Olympics, other athletes, Arthur Ashe, others who have taken a stance for social justice on that. And I'm loving that piece. But I'm wondering, as I look at your image, you are now 70 plus years of age. That's hard for some people to believe because we almost freeze them in time.
Yeah.
That he's still, you know, that 20-year-old, right? But I'm wondering if there are things you did that you wish you hadn't, or things you did not do that you wish you had. As you take a retrospective look, let's break that in half.
Thank you.
Are the things that you did you wish you hadn't in your life?
You know, if I could identify something wrong that I did, I'd be sitting here all night trying to figure out how I could have done it better. But I'm thankful the way that it was put in my mind by God for me to decipher a future for not only me, but the young folks that are bound to happen. As long as there's the human race, there's going to be reasons to do certain things. And not all those things are going to be sacrificial because we have a lot of folks who are not going to sacrifice. The dollar bill means more to them than helping the generation out that needs more than that dollar bill.
So given that, I can't help but ask this question as well, which is, there are some athletes we've seen who, in the midst of social injustice in the country, don't mind using their platform to be able to speak out. And there are some who almost refuse to get involved or socially engaged because of, you know, the impact that it might have on their brand or the money they make or something, right?
Yeah, right.
Tell me about your generation of folk and how your generation looks at this current generation of athletes who struggle with that particular
Well,
piece.
that's a big one, and we spend a whole lot of time on that. But let me crack through it just real quick and then run, okay? Mexico City, the athletes had a lot of meetings. It wasn't just a, let's do this thing, man. It wasn't no this thing, man. Ray Brown, are you out there? Yeah, I'm here. Okay, Ray Brown was 17 years old and still owed me $5. It was decided that there would not be a boycott by the entire group of athletes. I'm happy that happened because I did want to run. But I was willing, Dr. Parham, to sacrifice for the platform of the OPHR or the Olympic Project for Human Rights. So it was decided, no, we will not boycott, we will run because the athletes had a different meaning. I was ROTC. Mel Pender was Army, Charlie Green was Army, so you know what that would do? That would have been, what do you call that when you go to, when you go to Army court? It was court martial for them, and or extra time in Vietnam. So it was decided that we compete, but each athlete would represent himself according to how he felt the country represented them. That freed everybody up to do their own thing, excuse the expression, their own thing. That's one. The other one is I had, as I said, no choice to do what I demanded of myself because of where I was and not who I was. That's how it happened. I know that I just didn't answer exactly because I forgot the question, but it did more good than my not saying anything about something.
No, you're doing good,
Thank you very much.
and you're doing great. And particularly as you think about that, I mean, I've known Tommy for years through the 100, but it's hard for me to even place myself, and I was well alive in 1968 and watching you on that stand. I mean, it's an iconic moment that is forever etched in my mind and the minds of other people because of the courage that took and the sacrifice that he made. But our last question is, it's 74 years of age. There are a lot of people who look back and they think about legacy, right? Yeah. What is the legacy you hope to leave? to all of these people and the world?
You know, it has been written a long time ago. And the passage, and it's the passage that I always try to hold up, is other people. Could have been my downfall, but that's my problem. There's redemptive measures to that, I do believe, because 74 years old, I can still move around pretty good. Is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And as far as faith is concerned, I have a lot of that is, of all you Christian folks out there, Hebrews 11:1. Faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But without faith, faith is dead.
Faith is dead, that's right.
Just think about that, you students out there who look over your shoulders of your buddy in front and try to get that A from cheating. I can tell you it don't work. Sometimes.
The great Algerian psychiatrist, Frantz Fanon argued that every generation out of relative obscurity must reach out and seek to fulfill its legacy or betray it. I think you have a room full of people who would agree that given the legacy that you inherited of social uplift and thinking about community and thinking about the human dignity and humanity of others and not just yourself, that you, my brother, have fulfilled your legacy and not betrayed it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the incomparable Tommie Smith.
All right, thank you. I'm going to interest of time, invite our distinguished panel to come on up and join the stage. And as they do that, I'm going to just give a little bit of an introductory remarks. I only have 4 or 5 pages here. How many of you have seen Shut Up and Dribble? Oh, okay, not enough. All right. The executive producer of Shut Up and Dribble is LeBron James. The title comes from a dismissive, I think derogatory, comment by white folks. Come on, just come on up. I'll introduce you. Just, I don't know, however you want to do it. So the title, Shut Up and Dribble, comes from a comment a white conservative commentator made who was disgusted that LeBron James and other black athletes would speak out against the president. They should, she said, just shut up and dribble. NPR contributor Linda Holmes reviewed the show and ended her review with these remarks. It's a strange idea, this expectation that black players must entertain and not speak. The NBA is a business that makes ridiculous money for mostly white owners from the work of many black athletes. It's fed by the NCAA, which makes ridiculous money for schools from the work of many black athletes. It's covered by disproportionately white sports media and regulated by a mostly white political system. Well, to help us understand that and unpack that, we've got a great panel, and let me introduce them really quickly. Ms. Tamika Smith-Jones, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at UC Riverside. Tamika, welcome. From the NFL Network, former All-Pro running back and Super Bowl champion with the New Orleans Saints, Mr. Reggie Bush. Here's a fact about Reggie. He has more Twitter followers than everyone else in the room combined. Our very own Toro, senior sociology major, member of the Toro women's volleyball team, middle blocker, 5 feet 10 inches, Miss Esther Duru. If you are Sonoma State, you do not want to see Esther. Last month, Esther had against Sonoma 20 kills, 24 points, 9 digs, and 7 blocks. Good job, Esther. Here to moderate our panel, an individual who also happens to moderate panels on the NFL's signature network show, NFL Total Access, Mr. Steve White. Steve is the reporter who broke the Colin Kaepernick story, and who better to help us walk and think through these ideas. I will turn it over to Steve, and I believe there will be an opportunity for Q&A, for some questions, as our panel gets going.
Yeah, one thing I like doing with these types of things is, if something is set up here sparks a question, raise your hand. We have some folks with some microphones. I hate waiting till the end because then you forget the question you want to ask. And plus, you may ask us something that really drives a great conversation, something we're not thinking about, because a lot of you are a lot smarter than us up here. And one thing, we're talking about athletes and activism. And a legendary sports editor of mine, George Solomon with the Washington Post, said to me, and hopefully this resonates as much to you, why this is so important for athletes to get involved, is athletics and entertainment are the only two realms of Americana where everyone can pretty much have an equal, although opposite, opinion. An 8th grade dropout can talk about the Rams game with someone with 15 degrees. So that's why when athletes step out and do some of the things like Tommy Smith has done, like LeBron has done, like Colin Kaepernick has done, it resonates. So always understand that, and that's why it's the importance and the effectiveness sometimes when athletes step out, which leads us to your Torah. Esther, for those who may not know, you have taken a position during the playing of the national anthem and during some things before volleyball games, I should say. First off, explain to the audience some of the things that you've done.
So during games, during the national anthem, I'll just look down to the floor, or I'll take a knee, or I'll face another direction. And basically that's just me having discomfort and disappointment in our current administration and social climate that we have today, and how, it's kind of reflecting the past. The past history repeats itself and things of that nature. When we talk about intersectionalities, we want to talk about race, sex, and gender, and in our society today, there's inequalities, and there's police brutality, there's lack of pay for women, there's lack of distribution of resources in our society, So when I look at this flag, it didn't really resonate with me well to stand up proudly with my, right hand around my heart when the lyrics in this anthem don't really resemble what's happening in our society. It talks about the land of the free, home of the brave, but the question is, who is really free? There's so many people who are struggling in our society, so many people who are being silenced. And, it just wasn't right to me. So that was my stance on it, or my non-stance on it.
Well, besides doing that, though, were you having these conversations with teammates, classmates? Was it anything that resonated deeper throughout the campus, or was this just your own little personal deal?
Yeah, I feel like it was my own little personal feel. I'm a sociology major, so obviously we're looking at human interaction and, how societies are built, how people, live off each other, and, these climates that exist. So, that really inspired me to, think about these types of things and kind of take my own stance on it.
Tamika, as an administrator of athletics, and Reg, you can jump in here too. Yeah. I mean, have you had an athlete do this? And if so, how did the administration handle a situation like this? Or if it hasn't happened, how would it handle something like this? I mean, do you have to have conversations with coaches as a preemptive measure? Or how is that handled from up above?
Well, I've had a firsthand experience with that the day after Colin Kaepernick kneeled, as a mother, as a professional, as just a woman in general, being challenged every day on different, she said it best, Esther said it best, with the comfortable and uncomfortable spaces that I have to step into every day and show up. I went to campus the next day, and the first call I had was to my chancellor. And I told him just what I said then, you in the news, you understand what's going on right now in athletics. Yes, can I come talk to you from a personal and a professional, as a leader of your athletic program, but also as a representative of your leadership team. So I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. And definitely needed to make sure that I was navigating the space most appropriately. I wanted to make sure I separated the personal from the professional and represented well. So he was who he is, Chancellor Kim Wilcox, who hired me at the University of California, Riverside. Very supportive, understood, had a lot of compassion and empathy. Was very pleased that I came to him to talk about it, and supported me going to my staff and having a conversation with the coaches. And so that was the next step. I went straight to my office, called all coaches meeting, made sure everybody was aware, because sometimes people are not conscious. They are not aware of what's going on. You know, they're in their own spaces. You know, they're not watching, you know, football. And so we have to be leaders and make them aware of that. And so I just had the conversation of, if this happens, then, you know, what position we need to be understanding that we are in, with empathy, with compassion, with understanding, with listening. It's not for us to dictate or tell our student athletes what to do. That's the beauty of being at a UC. See, I'm from Atlanta. Peace up, A-Town down.
Why y'all always gotta do that?
I'll just say it.
Every time somebody from Atlanta, they gotta let you know they're really from Atlanta.
And you know, I'm very conscious of civil rights. I'm very conscious of you know, being a product of HBCU, where we're not just dealing with social inequality from a race standpoint, but just like Esther said it so beautifully, it's in all measures. Yeah. And I live in that space every day. And so to make sure that our student athletes had that freedom to speak, express, as long as they didn't disrupt, you know, business. You know, talk about sports and business.
Oh, we're gonna get there.
Okay.
We're gonna get there.
So that was a part of it, but you know, everybody wasn't on the same page with it. But as the voice of the program, everybody supported that decision, and I think they appreciated us coming forward with it. And that's one of the things that I think we should do more of. And these kind of conversations help us to embrace it more, because you know, most people are non-confrontational in these places, but you have to confront them and be able to speak to them so that you can understand them. So we did have a scenario where we had student athletes that wanted to express themselves in different ways. I have to think about it from a donor's perspective. And I had a donor that reached out to one of the senior administrators. I wasn't at the game that day, and she immediately called me to say, I had this conversation with a donor. Somebody didn't stand. You know, what should I do? And I said, you do nothing. You tell the donor they can call me to have a conversation if they felt offense, and I want to understand what they were feeling. And then we'll talk about how we're going to deal with it. Donor never had a conversation with me. And so it's just one of those things as leaders that you do have to make sure that first you're understanding your leadership. Leadership is very important, all layers. So as an administrator, I do believe that I have a responsibility to also lead my coaches and our student athletes into safe spaces to be able to have good conversation and understanding.
I think for the NFL players and all the guys who are playing now, when the Kaepernick thing happened, when he took a knee, a lot of guys were frustrated because the narrative was changed, and the narrative that we don't appreciate our military, or somehow we're being disrespectful towards the military, and how that narrative somehow became a part of what Kaepernick was doing, frustrated a lot of people in the NFL. And a lot of guys, including myself, have family members that have fought in the wars in the military. We come from military backgrounds. And so for someone to say that, we don't appreciate our military, I think was hurtful for us. I go back to times where a lot of times in teams I've been on, coaches will bring in a war veteran or somebody from the Navy SEAL to speak to our team, because there are a lot of similarities in what they do and what we do. Obviously the landscape is a lot different, but just the mindset of it is very similar. And I have to tell you, a lot of times when these military veterans get up and speak, every single person in that room is glued to the speaker, because we appreciate what they do. And honestly, in another lifetime, honestly, we wish we could, do some of the things that they've done. And so I think for a lot of NFL players, that was the most frustrating part about it, was that we love our military, we love our country, we love our flag. We just have an issue with the social injustice and the things that continue to happen in our communities. And one of the most frustrating parts as well is that, people will often say, like to LeBron, stay in your place, shut up and play your sport. What do you know about politics, or what do you know about social injustice, because you have a lot of money. And so for some reason, you don't see racism, or somehow you're not affected by these same things that everyday people are affected by, but
your kids are going to school with
right,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
But before the sports, before the money, before our families and kids and anything else that has come along with the sport, I was always this. I was always black. And that will never change. And that will always be that. And so for me to just somehow suddenly act like I'm not this anymore because I got money, that's the wrong message. And so that was one of the most frustrating parts for a lot of the NFL players, is that, listen, I know we are sometimes held up to this higher standard because we're on TV and you see a lot of different things that go on with professional athletes' lives, but we very much care about our families, our communities, and everything that goes on every day that affects everybody in this world.
And Reggie said it very well. And it's interesting because, like I said, I was the first one to report on Colin Kaepernick not standing for the national anthem. Remember, he sat before he met with the Green Beret, encouraged him to maybe to show a gesture that might be more amenable to more people, and that was to take the knee. That was the simple. But Reggie, you played with Cap.
Yeah.
If there's any way you can shine a little light on, maybe because you were there the year before.
I was there the year before he took. Yeah, before he
did this. Did anyone see this coming?
Nobody saw this coming, and this wasn't a thing that was, that Kaepernick had voiced to any of us in the locker room, any of our teammates. Kaepernick at that time when I was there, he had a very rocky relationship with a lot of the players, a lot of the people in the front office, for various reasons that I obviously won't get into. But we never saw anything like that. But before Kaepernick, there were a lot of talks about doing something amongst players. I remember actually reaching out, whatever year was that Eric Garner was killed by the police officers.
That was 2016.
2016. I remember reaching out to Richard Sherman through Twitter, and I've known him for a while. But I reached out to him because I felt like we needed to do something, and I didn't know what that something was. I didn't know if it was during the national anthem or whatever it was. I felt like as collectively for the NFL and for players and just for everybody else, we needed to do something to make a stand. And so we wanted to get everybody on the same page. We wanted to obviously get him to get the Seattle Seahawks on page. I was with the Detroit Lions at the time, and it ended up not working out. I think because we were scared. We were nervous. We didn't know the backlash that we were going to get. And so I remember I ended up writing just "I Can't Breathe" on my shirt. And I went out and warmed up, and I didn't realize how big of a deal that was, just to write words on your shirt, just showing your form of protest, just by writing some letters on the shirt. And then after the game, I got a ton of questions about it, and then that's when I realized, like, okay, this thing is bigger than just me writing words on a shirt. This thing goes deeper than that. And then I don't know if you remember, the next week, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they all had the I Can't Breathe shirts, and a lot of NBA guys, started doing it, and so it became a thing. And then the next year, I believe, is when, no, it was a couple years after that.
What?
Right?
That?
The
Kaepernick.
No, Cap did it that year, and we're going to get
to
that
was
point.
that year? Or
yeah,
was
because
that
we're
year?
going to
Sorry.
talk about,
I play football, man. I get a lot of these times and years. I get them mixed up. You know what I mean? So bear with me, please.
Should play basketball.
I know. I should have played. No, my kids gonna play basketball.
That's right. Okay, so Esther, I want to get to you because we heard Tommy talk about sacrifice. Colin Kaepernick has not worked in the NFL since his contract expired that season.
Yep.
Okay, he has not worked, and people could talk about, well, he doesn't fit here and there, but we know why he's not working.
Yeah.
Did you ever fear that you could lose your scholarship or lose whatever you wanted to make make your method with your message with by taking your stance?
I feel at the end of the day, whatever happened, my choice was the correct choice. So I wasn't too worried about, okay, what's gonna happen after. I just knew that I needed to use my rights of expression and go with that. And whatever happened, I was gonna go through, and there were gonna be people who supported me and people who didn't, no matter what happened.
How'd your teammates react?
So some teammates were like, go ahead, we support you. Some people were a little nervous, you know. This whole topic is like very controversial to a lot of people, so some people were just nervous for me and for the attention that they might receive. So it was just like, you know, some people were like, yeah, go ahead, we don't care. Some people were like, oh, maybe you should stay quiet. But at the end of the day, like, I feel like I had a mission and I was gonna do it either way.
All right. Okay, quickly, do we have a microphone? We have a question right here. This gentleman right here in the very front. Right here in front of me. And we'll do this again. If something is said that really sparks something, just raise your hand. If there's a natural break, we'll get to the question.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for being here. My question is really kind of toward the Kaepernick. He hasn't worked, and we know why. They don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to believe he's not getting paid. Mm-hmm. Nike capitalized on that effort, mm-hmm. and their stock went down for a hot minute, and then it tripled. So they made a good investment. So how do we then, you know, for the frustrated players, mm-hmm. Reggie, that you were saying, because it kind of got twisted. Mm-hmm. It was not about, you know, I'm tired of how black folks and people of color are treated in this country. Has absolutely nothing to do with disrespecting the flag or the military. Mm-hmm. So he hasn't worked. He's now getting paid. But what do those athletes now do? Do they continue? Do we then try to bargain with Nike to say, hey, you're making all this money. How do we return some of that into an educational program in the community? So people get better information, so people are more informed. How do we manage that media piece? How do we continue to not make this die, or because it got twisted, we just kind of let it go?
Okay, there's a lot in that question, but Reggie, if you could explain about NFL players, they don't have guaranteed contracts, whereas athletes in other professional sports
That's why my kids gonna play basketball.
You're a smart man.
Right, because I mean, that's, you just said you were scared.
And it's tough because for NFL players, and NFL is the only sport that's like this. Our contracts are not guaranteed, and
it's called at will.
Yeah, exactly. So when you see an NFL contract, you see, you know, a guy signs a $100 million contract, and you see the signing bonus is, you know, $20 million or whatever it is. That signing bonus is the only thing that's guaranteed to him. So I'll give you an example. I signed a 4-year contract with the Detroit Lions. After 2 years, they decided to cut me, and I was owed some money. And, well, sorry, the money was not owed to me, obviously. So the day they cut me, I was not getting paid anymore. And it's the only sport that's like that. And you'll see when the new CBA comes up, that's going to be the biggest one of the biggest issues that players will bring up is we need guaranteed contracts. Because if you think about it, in no other form of work, you know, can someone cut you and then not have to pay you? And so that's the way it is right now in football. And it's very frustrating because, you know, it's security, right? It's the way we make our money. It's the way we provide for our families. And, you know, for a lot of different reasons. But teams will cut you for younger and cheaper. Even if the next guy that they're bringing in to replace you doesn't give them the same production. He could just give them half the production, right? And we're actually seeing this play out right now with Le'Veon Bell. So Le'Veon Bell, you know, is trying to get a big contract, right? And so he's been kind of demonized as, you know, he's you know, selfish, right? And so these are the kind of things that go on because we don't have guaranteed contracts. And because for running backs, the window of opportunity is short. It's so short. The average life expectancy, the average career for NFL players is 3 to 4 years. It is very short. And for running backs, is even shorter. So as a running back, you have to get the most money you can while you can. Because once it's gone, you ain't getting it back. They're not coming back to give you any money just because they like you, because you won them a Super Bowl, or because you've been to a couple Pro Bowls. They are done. That's it. And so it's playing out right now with Le'Veon Bell. We actually just talked about it on NFL Network on Tuesday. You know, Le'Veon Bell, his contract, if he signs a tender, would be like $14 million. Right now, James Conner, who's playing very well for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is cheaper. And his contract is $578,000. right?
Right.
And so those are the kind of things that happen in our sport. Those are the kind of games that are played. But until we get guaranteed contracts, the players will never have complete leverage.
And
So for the student athletes,
yes, I was going to.
earn your degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That part.
Yeah.
Earn your degree. And go to grad school, right?
We talked earlier about, Dr. Smith talked about, and what Kaepernick's thing is about, the courage. So can you talk about a little bit of the mindset? If we understand, I understand nobody wants to be without a job, but I think even the branding on Kaepernick's commercial now says, stand for something, even if it costs you everything. So where is that mindset about courage now and sacrifice, as opposed to the me and I gotta have a job?
Yeah.
He figured out a way to not have a job and still get paid.
Yeah, but not everybody else can.
No,
can
I
do
get that,
right?
but I'm just wanting to know where, climate-wise, with athletes who have much more of a media visibility than regular people, just regular brother from
Right,
another way.
and
So
keep
where
in
does that
mind,
sacrifice go?
Kaepernick had banked about $30 million before he made his gesture.
Right.
Okay, so he had a little nest
didn't
egg, and
necessarily
that's why.
need to work.
Right, and that's why someone like James Conner who's making $500-some thousand.
He might have a
twice
different, he
before
might
then.
think twice.
But I want to get to, as an athletic department administrator, you guys have shoe deals or apparel deals or equipment deals with Nike and Reebok and Under Armour or whoever. The fear, you talked about how you've had that open dialogue with your coaches and whatnot, but is there any reservation in case now we know Nike's not going to pull back, but they say, hey, look, we're not going to give you your basketball team sneakers, or we're not going to give you equipment if this continues, if this protest continues, or this type of vitriol might continue. Is there any concern on your end, because you did talk about donors in that public relations and other type of backlash with your earlier incident?
Absolutely. I think just as, human nature, you have that awareness. But again, I'm so focused on making sure that as a leader and educator that we allow our student athletes to really embrace a holistic college experience, that I'm not swayed one way or another by someone else's opinion or thoughts, or, I like to stay with the facts. And so as a part of the great UC, we get a chance to allow our student athletes to really have a voice. We get a chance to teach them and guide them. We get a chance to not, necessarily control what they're doing in that aspect. We allow them to grow and mature on campus. So with the donor experience, as a mature adult, I can pretty much gauge, probably better than my student athletes can, when someone is going to really confront us about anything. I get paid for judgment, I get paid for anticipation, all those, skills. So I have to best position my unit, my department, my program, my student athletes, and also make sure that I'm walking in lockstep with leadership, which is a chancellor of our university and its leadership team. So, I was going to wear my equality shirt today, ask my senior associate. But I decided not to. But I wore a lot of words, just, In
your Delta colors.
In my Delta colors. But, because we're sponsored by Adidas. And so it's one of those things where you just have to try to make the right decision, but be authentically you. Dr. Smith said it best, there's a self in this. We're all a part of a team. We have to understand that. But, if you don't authentically be who you are, you lose every day. And so I have to make sure that I show up the best Tamika Smith-Jones, because the Esther that's looking at me is going to go out into this world shaky and flaky and going to fail because I showed up some fake athletic director or administrator that was trying to, pacify her way through this landscape when it's a real big world out there that is not going to play fair, and she's got to be able to sleep well at night. So that's just the way I'm wired, and I think it's benefited our student athlete body as a whole, because I have seen in my 3 years at the University of California, Riverside, our student athletes gain that confidence, gain that voice, and not all respectfully, all trying to get to a good place of understanding, but all at a level of compassion and empathy for one another, to be able to live in this, melting pot that we're all living in every day. So it's been a good experience. I've had meetings with every vendor and every partner and sponsor of our program the day one I stepped on campus, and I told them quite clearly, you know, the vision of the university. I'm at University of California, Riverside because it's mission driven. I've been all of my career at minority serving institutions because I know that feeling every day, and I can best express that and share that and lead and guide and be a model for those that are in my presence every day. And so when I have those conversations with donors, sponsors, partners, it's very authentic, and it's got to be a real partnership and a relationship that they understand our core values and what we stand for and what we're trying to do. And it's all about the student athletes, their experience, them maturing on that campus, them becoming mature adults that can go out into this world and be great citizens.
To piggyback on that, I want all of you to chime in on this, and Esther, I want to start with you. Differing opinions. Okay, you say there's certain things in that flag that really don't hit home with you, but what about other people on this campus or on your team who those values of that flag, the things that don't sound good to you, sound great to them? Are there healthy discussions? Or is there, as Dr. Smith said, it's just like, hey, you believe this, I believe that, we'll function as two separates? What about that type of discussion? Reg, you've been in locker rooms with guys who feel certain ways, and I'm sure we've all worked in environments in certain ways, but especially here on a college campus, you're about to embark, you're a senior, about to embark on the real world, so to speak. Handling people with different views, are people understanding of how you feel, and are you willing to listen to how they feel?
Definitely. I think most importantly, it's good to start off with respect. Everybody's going to have their own perspective on every single issue that you face. I feel like it's important to listen first and really understand what the other person is saying, and then give your own feedback on it. And, you know, who knows? Anything you say might get through to them, might not, but at the end of the day, you deciding on giving your own partake on it is good, because if you just continue doing that with each person, someone might actually, oh wait, I kind of get your side now. They may change their mind, and then it's just a domino effect that might continue on.
And you've had that experience? People have been great listening to you and you listening to them?
I've had that experience, and I've had that experience not go so well.
Okay. That's good. I mean, that's part of it. That's life.
I also think that's what's so great about sports, because Doc asked the question earlier, should sports be used as a platform for social issues and for other things that go on in our world? And as you have seen with Dr. Tommy Smith, it already has been. It's been for a long time. Sports brings together people from all different walks of life. Old, young, white, black, Asian, Mexican, Muslim, Christian, Catholic. It doesn't matter your religion, because when we all turn on that TV or we're in that stadium and we're all cheering for the same team, that's what sports embodies to me. And that's why I love sports so much. And I think that's why sports in itself just is such a powerful message, because I've played with people from any and everywhere. Had the pleasure of playing with a guy, from Australia who had never played football before in his lifetime.
Jared Haynes?
Jared Haynes, came over when I was in San Francisco. And that to me was such a great opportunity, because for one, I got a chance to learn more about his sport and their culture, but also he got a chance to learn about our culture and our sport and why it's so important, to us, and why football is so important, all these different things. And that's what, to me, that's what sports embodies. And that's why we need to continue to have these conversations, and we have to have sports be a part of these issues.
Quickly before you speak, you've played in different markets.
Yeah.
Okay, New Orleans, as we know, you were there right after the hurricane.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so it's a very black city, it's a very poor city, but at the same time, there's significant amounts of racism among the community there.
Yeah.
What is it like as a California guy going into that type of environment?
Yeah.
Your teammates may be great, okay, and people may love Reggie Bush, the football player, but when you go into a certain arena, and you're sensing like, hey, this isn't quite Southern California. Correct. I mean, how is it kind of balancing, and were you fearful of it, or did you take it and learn from it?
I was scared. I was nervous as heck. Getting drafted, by the Saints, I didn't know what to expect. I had been in Southern California my whole life. I had never been in Louisiana. My grandmother was from Louisiana. so I got Louisiana cooking, but but I never got a chance to go and experience it. And I got there at a very, very tough time when there was not a lot of hope. People were fearful. People had lost so much, and I never forget, man. When I got drafted, I flew down, and the first thing they did was take me on a tour of the 9th Ward and where all the destruction had happened in Louisiana. And I'm driving through there, and I'm trying to take it all in, because on one side I'm supposed to be extremely happy about this. I get a chance to live out my dream. I get to go play in the NFL. And on the other side, we're driving through the 9th Ward, and I'm seeing spray paint of numbers on houses that represented the amount of bodies that were found. And that was tough to take in, because as a young kid, you're just trying to do the best you can. You're just trying to enjoy the whole experience, but then you're kind of hit in the face with, this big issue as to, how can I help these people? And how can I restore hope? It didn't matter what their skin color was. It didn't matter if they're white, black, or whoever it was, but how can we help these people? And so we took it on our shoulders to not only to be the best we could be on the football field, but we got out and active into the communities. We literally, physically, with our bare hands, helped rebuild homes. And that is something that I will never forget, because the first restaurant I went to in New Orleans was Chef Emerald. I'm sure a lot of you know who Chef Emerald is. He has a restaurant called Emerald's. And I walked into the restaurant, and everybody in the restaurant stood up and applauded. It didn't matter what their skin color was. They all stood up and applauded. And I thought the coaches had set that up and was like trying to impress me. Like, you already signed me, and you don't have to do all this, right? But that was the welcome that I got, from the city. And so for me, that moment right there, I knew we had a chance to make a huge impact in this community and leave them with something special. And that's what we did. We went to work, and it was tough. It was not easy. We had a lot of ups and downs, but the journey was so fun. I mean, it was amazing. And that's what it's really about. A lot of times I get a chance to talk to these kids, and a lot of times, and including me, I've been there before, where you're so focused on the end result. You're so focused on the trophy, right, that you forget about the journey and everything that you built in the process. And that's really that's the best part about it, is the process, is enjoying the process, right? And so we got a chance to really just enjoy this process and also be able to restore hope into a city of people that really needed it at a crucial time. And so when we won the Super Bowl in 2009, that was the most special, one of the most special moments of my life. I'll never forget just seeing people crying, people dancing in the streets. And if you've ever been in New Orleans, they love to dance. Yep. It'll be a Tuesday, nothing going on at 12 o'clock, and you'll see a second line going down the street for no reason at all, just because they want to get out there and dance. Yep. Just because, and that's what's so special about New Orleans. I always tell people, one of my favorite places to visit and some of the best cooking you'll ever get is in New Orleans. I've been everywhere in this world. New Orleans, hands down, is the best food I've ever had.
All right. Let's get to a question. We got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, okay, right back here, and then this gentleman here in the blue hat. He's got it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nelson Williams. I'm a student here, and like Dr. Parham, I'm a 100 member. Thank you for this lecture series. This is awesome. I want to talk about the narrative. You started off with a narrative, and Esther Dura was talking about how she felt about the flag and the national anthem. And I'm looking at this poster, and this poster is all individuals who are basically doing what they felt is right, but it's reactionary. It's reactionary to a time in their life. But when you think about things, we need, why aren't we more proactive? And I'll say this. The national anthem has 4 verses to it. And the third verse is racial towards black people. It's racist towards the soldiers that fought in that war. But that narrative is never spoken. So when you talk about someone taking a knee because of the national anthem, No one talks about that. The narrative is, well, he's disrespectful or she's disrespectful. But as a group of nationalists, no one is making that argument that national anthem is racist to us. And so so my question is, as athletes, as sports commentators, why, is that narrative a reality? And if it is, what can we do about it?
Well, first off, that stanza, the third stanza, hasn't brought up, but to Reggie's point, initially, Colin Kaepernick wasn't protesting the stanza. That was the summer where we saw Eric Garner get choked out, Philando Castile get shot by police. We saw a lot of police shootings, and a lot of these young football players who were 26, 27, 28 saw people their age, unarmed, get taken down. So, again, when we talk about the national anthem, and some people have brought up that third stanza, and that's why some people for years have not stood for it, who may not have been athletes. But again, in my conversation with Cap and Eric Reed and some of these people, their issue is more so of what's going on in society than the actual national anthem itself.
No, that part I understand. That part I understand. There was a statement, but after the knee, the narrative was like, there's a disrespect to the flag, there's a disrespect to the nation. But that's where I'm coming from. This is what I'm saying. Is that no one has nationally brought up the issue, is that the representation of the national anthem is a disrespect to our people.
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but it has been brought up.
Yeah, I think it has.
Especially in NFL. And after Kaepernick took the knee, and then once we started to bring more attention to the social injustice that was going on every day in the streets, we also had the discussions about the flag and about the words, in the national anthem. And so, even though, because the bigger issue was the social injustice and things that were going on, we had the conversations about it, but that kind of took the league by storm, really. And then also to your to a point that you made about being more, rather than reactionary, but finding ways to how can we get out in front of this thing. Those are some conversations I've had with Galen, who works, who's my boss.
One of our executives here at the NFL Network.
One of our executives at the NFL Network. But we've had discussions about that. I've had a ton of discussions about, with other players. And then also the player coalition was formed, with NFL players, which is basically, and you can speak more to this, but what exactly it is, but it was formed because we wanted to be able to, and the players want to be able to get out in front of these things and not just wait until something happens, because when we wait till something happens, it's already too late, right? And so Malcolm Jenkins, a guy who I play with, who is a great, great young man and a huge vocal activist, for a lot of these things. I think he's one of the
he's the
leaders.
Head of the Players
He's the head of the Players Coalition. And so out of all of that, the Players Coalition was formed so that we can get out ahead of these issues and get out ahead of these topics and start having discussions like we're having right now, and rather than waiting to it. And because, like I said, once you wait till something happens, it's too late.
And quickly, the kind of narrative has changed, and it's interesting to see how this has evolved from the moment, from protest, from activism, to action. And you have seen in Massachusetts several Patriots players, including their owner Robert Kraft, went to state legislators, and because of their celebrity, highlighted a bill that changed the age. In Massachusetts, children as young as 7 years old could be put into the juvenile detention system. These are kids who might have ADHD or something and just hadn't been properly diagnosed. And because of their action, they got a bill passed. That age was moved to 12. Down the Players Coalition, yesterday in the midterm elections in Florida, helped their celebrity and their push, got a bill passed which allowed certain former inmates now to have the rights to vote. Right, 1.4 million. So this is to your point. This is some of the proactive measures that this has really spawned. Okay, we had a question. This gentleman here in the blue hat had his hand up for a long time. I'm sorry.
She was.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me, everybody? I'm from the era of Dr. Smith, and I lived through a lot of what we're talking about firsthand. And something that we moved away from. The saying back then was power to the people. We need to recognize, as Dr. Smith emphasized, that unity is one of the areas we got to cling on to. If you as a player had to sacrifice your salary because the owners didn't agree with what you did, we could shut it down if we don't pay for the ticket at the stadium. And what I want to ask all of you, what can we do? I have a union background, and I know this works because we shut down Arnold when he was the governor. You need to inform those of us that love you, your fans, that you support the injustices that are done to us. See, it's not isolated. It's not something that was done to a football player or a basketball player or whatever sport. But what can we do to unify and support you, where when that owner says, I'm going to penalize you for what you did, is there some kind of alert kit that you can send out and say, don't buy that ticket?
We sent out a tweet.
Don't buy that ticket. Now, we might be able to rent the stadium here and you have your friends coming and have an unofficial game and we support that so you have some income. But what I'm saying is, just like it was horrible in that day, I grew up in it. It was horrible. And it didn't get better, but it hasn't got as worse as it could be because of the Dr. Tommy Smiths and the people that took the position. So what can we do? I don't have nothing to lose. If I go to jail, my pension check still comes in.
I'm retired, so I'm good. They can't take my money away from me. Sorry, but I think everything you said was spot on. And that's why during those times when we were having an issue with the national anthem and everything was going on Kaepernick, I don't remember who it was that said it. I'm so mad I can't remember, but they came out and said that we also need our white players to stand up with us, because this is not just a black issue. This is an issue for everybody. Everybody in this league is affected by it. Everybody in this country is in some way, shape, or form affected by what is going on now. Whether you like it or not, you're affected by it in some way, shape, or form. And so that's why I was so happy to see, and again, it was, unfortunately, it was reactionary, but when Donald Trump made the statement about the black players taking a knee, every team made a statement. I don't know if you guys remember that. Every team came out.
I think they took the bait, Reg.
Holding arms.
I think they took the bait. Because my whole thing was, if the players weren't down with it from the beginning, if you're going to let that man say that and everyone come out and do it, because owners who tried to enact an anthem policy afterwards were down there on their knees and stuff too. I think they took the bait.
Exactly, and that's what I love about it.
I think that was more of a gesture of, let's react instead of being a gesture of sincerity.
But it forced, and it's very hard to get things solved when you're comfortable. People got to be uncomfortable. And that statement made everybody in the NFL uncomfortable. Not just NFL players, basketball players. It made everybody uncomfortable. And that's why I was so happy to see that even though it was reactionary, we still showed up. And everybody showed up, and everybody was linked in arms, everybody took a knee. And that was, to me, that's what sports means, and that's what sports stands for.
We got time for one more, and this gentleman in the blue hat has been waiting a long time.
Oh, it's working, cool. How's it going, everybody? First of all, thank you to the panel, as well as Tommy Smith, as well as everyone that got this together. My name is Thomas Abeo. I'm actually a student, as well as a student leader here. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs as part of Associated Students. My question is, I know it's but I wanted to know, being that I'm going to be traveling to, as part of a student leader, I'm part of the Social Justice and Equity Committee. I felt like it was a perfect opportunity, especially the fact that I'm also from Turlock, hometown of Colin Kaepernick, shout out 209. Even though they don't really, well, that's a different can of worms. But I just want to know what you would want me to tell this committee, considering that I'm one of the board members representing California State University Dominguez Hills, as well as the CSU system-wide as a whole.
Where are you traveling to again? Sorry.
I'm actually going to be going to San Luis Obispo, and that's part of what my duties as Director of Legislative Affairs. So mainly, I'm on the Social Justice and Equity Committee, along with my counterparts from other CSUs. and I want to hear from the panel on what you would want, what you would want them to take action on.
I think the
Considering
first
what we
thing,
talked about.
I think the first thing people have to know is, and I think Dr. Tommy Smith alluded to earlier, is that your silence is just as is a statement. Being silent on these issues is just as bad as somebody who is being racist. You have to stand up and get out in front of it. You have to be a part of this because we're all affected by it. And so being silent is you might as well just side with the other side, right? And so I think it's important for people to get out and talk about it. It's important for people to understand and to educate themselves about what's going on and to not remain silent, but to speak out, right? Like the elections that just happened, everybody was talking about get out and vote, get out and vote, get out and vote, get out and vote. We're trying to do the best we can to get everybody else, especially the young people, out to vote. Well, the same thing for these issues that go on, these social injustice issues. Like, speak out about it, talk about it. Don't be silent about it because everybody has an opinion about it. Whether we like it or not, we have to respect it, right? Whether you liked what Kaepernick did or not was their opinion, but you had to respect the fact that it was peaceful. And so I think just that message for especially young kids, young people, to talk about it. Don't be silent on these issues.
Piggybacking off of what he said, you're a student, right? So you have power in your words. I'm sure you work alongside other students of different backgrounds. You know how they feel about certain issues that's happening today. So I think it's important for you to understand that your voice matters and that what you express is going to really just create like a bigger discussion. And it's going to be really important for you to understand that what I'm saying carries weight. And then it's going to just influence other students to want to be involved just like the way you're doing that. So I think that it's just important to be expressive and understand that as a student, there's knowledge and power, and there's power in numbers. And so just take that and run and continue to really be positive in your stance and really be strong and just not give up.
I'll just say thank you for being here in your leadership position. I would expect you to be here, but you don't have to be here, right? And so when you go, one of the things that I always think about when I have to get in spaces like that is your voice is to bring awareness. Yeah. And so that's why you can't be silent. That's why you have to have the understanding. So understand what this space is. Do you understand what's going on socially that is making us uncomfortable? Us three. Good, thank you. So once you understand it, then you can be an advocate for that. And then that advocacy turns into advancement. That's where the action comes in. So those are 3 A's. Did you get them? Awareness, advocacy,
and action.
That action, that advancement. Then we can start moving the needle forward. So I appreciate the work that you're going to do, and I would like to hear back what you get from that.
Yeah, me too. I would like to hear back what you get from that as well.
All right, well, we're getting ready to button this up. I'm getting the high sign right here.
I need you, because I didn't have a lot of time. So
I was about to say, go ahead.
Okay, so Dr. Julie Shaw is my alum at UCR.
Just
and
go
she
ahead
has
and
a
say
question.
yes. Say
So
yes.
can she?
She's got it. I'm good. I can talk about this all day.
Thank you. Way to support. Way to support.
You saw that power move, Julie? You saw that power move?
Hello. I am Dr. Julie Shaw, and I am a proud alum of UC Riverside, where I played basketball. And so I'm actually currently a professor for Gonzaga University, and I am teaching a course on sport and society. So this is like textbooks comes to life right now, so I love it. And the question that I posed to my students this week, what are the 3 pressing issues that you see in sports today? And in a way it surprised me, but now looking at it, I can see why. They said that social media is one of the top issues in sports these days. And after I'm hearing all these comments, it's connecting, what can we do? What's the narrative? What is the media putting out there? And whether it's the negative stories that they're putting out, and how are you engaging people on yours? I mean, you got all those Twitter followers. So it's just, what are people doing? How are you engaging? How are you using social media? How do you see that that's affecting sport in our society and the social justice issues that are intertwined with that?
Great question.
Well,
I'll start,
Yeah,
Reggie.
that is a great question. Because there's a lot.
Listen, I'm married. I
Hey,
know.
Reggie.
I'm just going to let you.
I can block and move too now. You got all the followers, so I'm going to give my handle out. I think that if you follow me on TJ Sports 23, those are my thoughts, okay? You will see just a canvas of my life as a leader, as a mother, as a person. My hashtag is I'm a person, not a position. Hear that now. It's tough.
Yeah.
But that is, I'm a person and not a position. I hashtag, I'm a person and not a position. And that reminds me every day of my responsibility to be bringing people together on my social media and not dividing us even further. So anything that is of good and that's happening, I'm trying to see how first I'm looking through the lens of my student athletes, what's going on with them. My first year at UCR, the way my student athletes connected with me the most was they were following me on social media. I would show up on campus, and the first thing they would say is, A.D. Jones, we saw you drop the kids off this morning, and you did this, and I'm like, but that's how you capture them. And once I realized that I had their attention, it was my responsibility at that point to make sure I was putting things out there that is going to be impactful to them, that is going to allow them to have an even stronger voice, that is going to get them conscious of what's going on in the world. And so social media is very, very important. Very, very important. And Reggie, you can tell us what you're doing on your social media.
Well,
Reggie does not play.
If you follow me on social media, you know I really go in. And if you don't follow me right now. At Reggie Bush. It's very easy, just my name. So go ahead and hit that follow button. But I'm really active when it comes to social issues because I recognize and I realized a long time ago that I have a platform to speak out for people who don't have a platform. And so I touch a lot of different topics. And you know, like Steve said, I don't mess around. You know, I love to get into conversations about social issues, about politics, about sports, about whatever it is, because these conversations are important, right? And because you never know who else is watching, who else can be affected by that. And I heard, I don't remember who the guy was, said something, but he said, you know, when people come to your page, when people take a look at your page, do they leave better or do they leave worse? Yeah. And I thought that was such an important message because a lot of times with social media, there's the ugly side of it, right? And there's the other side of it where people like to, you know, make you think that their life is perfect. And nobody's life is perfect, right? And we all have issues. We all make mistakes. We all have crazy family members. We know we all have money issues. You know, whatever those issues are, we all go through those same problems. And just because, you know, you're a celebrity doesn't mean that your problems are less. It actually means that they might be worse. In my experience, they're worse. But you know, I just try to make sure that I'm always thoughtful. I'm always, I'm never disrespectful unless somebody disrespects me first, you know. But again, at the same time, you know, I think it's important to just remember, especially for young people, that you know, how do people leave, or how do they feel when they come to your page? Do they leave better or do they leave worse? And I also think that social media really teaches young people to hide behind a keyboard, to throw that rock behind your hands. And so I think is, you know, and one of the things my kids are, and it's crazy how kids are so much more advanced now because of the technological things that we have. But I mean, my kids will literally sit on the iPad all day if I let them, you know, and not even look up and know that, you know, a lot of stuff is going on in this world. But it's also important, I think, for young people to understand that, or to have, you know, these social skills, right? Because social media teaches you to get away from those social skills and to really hide behind that keyboard and put out a statement and you know what I mean? And that's it, right? And so I just think it's important to have conversations constantly. And again, if you don't follow me, go ahead and hit that follow button.
Go ahead.
I'll pull up. Just kidding. Not now.
Oh, okay. You don't want to hit the social media?
See first what's it saying, then I'll see if I'll follow you or not.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I respect that.
Research.
I will say this in terms of social justice. Athletes today are using it as such a tool to push their agendas, like Chris Long, a defensive end for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
he's gone over to Africa the past 4 or 5 years with his group called the Water Boys to come up with clean water reservoirs in areas where it's hard to get clean water. So many of these players are pushing, whether it's their product, whether it's, body armor, drinks, or whatever, they're using it. But in terms of social agenda, and what I do is I push the players. If someone's doing something positive, it's out there, because so many people do think the 8 or 9 players who do get arrested, so many people think that this is the NFL player,
Right.
when it's
Yeah.
not. So whether it's the Cleveland Browns meeting with former inmates in a job reentry program, using their names and their influence to help these people get jobs, even if they're coming to work for the Browns, I'm out there on social media pushing it. Now, because of who I work for, the first 3 letters of my network are NFL. I can't go in there and ding a politician or get emotional on there. That's just how it is. That's a sacrifice. I'm not going to lose my job over a Twitter blast.
I'll do it.
Reggie,
I go in on politicians.
Reggie
Seriously, I don't hold back.
But in terms of, again, how I see people using so much of social media, it's such a tool. They tell their own stories. They tell things without me having to interview them, which hopefully one day won't cost me my job. But they can tell it from certain perspectives that aren't getting told, because there are not a lot of me in my industry out interviewing people. Yeah. They're lesser of the Galen Gordons making the decisions as to what goes on air and what goes on the website. And so when people can control certain narratives, that's a really positive aspect of social media. Okay, now we're going to button this up. One thing to take away from this, and Tommy Smith, I had the pleasure of celebrating the 50th anniversary.
Can I just say thank you?
Yes.
I never got a chance to actually thank you
Yes.
personally, man. But seriously, I appreciate, on behalf of the NFL and everybody else, man, we really appreciate what you did. It was unfortunate we saw an altercation between Malcolm Jenkins and Eric Reed on the football field, but what you did, man, you paved the way for us, so I appreciate what you did. I also have to apologize to Dr. Tommy Smith, because it's a true story. I walked into the back room and I said, man, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And he was like, no, we met before. And so he's 74, I'm 33.
You play football.
I play football. That's my excuse. I play football, man. So please forgive me.
And understand, Dr. Tommy Smith, he's history, but as he said, let's all go make our own. Thank you guys so much. Well done.
We're going to wrap this up. We've got just a couple of quick things to do, and we're going to thank our guests. Dr. Parham's got a few words for us.
So let's see if we can bring Tommy, if we bring you back up on stage. Or Tommy is going to the piece, okay. I want to, first of all, let me just invite your attention for 30 more seconds. I hope that you've had not simply an occasion to be entertained this afternoon, but one to be informed, one to be stimulated, one to be excited, one to be illuminated by what this panel and our featured speaker, Olympian Tommy Smith, has brought to the table this afternoon. At California State University, Dominguez Hills, it is our charge, it is our challenge to educate the minds of these students today. And we are determined to be the place where these issues of politics or economics or sports or whatever the issue is, right, become those topics, right, that get talked about, that get spoken about, that get raised, so that we can help to raise the consciousness of everybody. It is really about communication. What our panel has said today is so pronounced and profound. What they've said is, think about communicating with each other. Think about advocating across your demographic boundaries for someone who doesn't necessarily look like you, but you share that same sense of humanity on their behalf. And think about dissipating, hopefully we've done that today, some of the biases and assumptions you bring with you into this space. That is the great equalizer that education provides. It's a way to take the stereotypes you have, check them at the door, interrogate them, advance them with facts, advance them with ideas, express opinion, but ultimately it is about respecting the dignity and humanity of each of our fellow men. That is fundamentally what Tommy Smith left us with today. And I want to just applaud him and thank all of you for both being here. I want to thank our panel. I want to thank Steve and Esther and Tamika and Reggie Bush and all the folk who helped us to make this panel possible. This is what you should expect out of California State University, Dominguez Hills. This is your university, and we've been glad to host you.